There are 7 generations of Corwins in the Accaboke, Long Island town cemetery. Their graves overlook the farm that's been in the family since the 1640s. Some family members' tombstones are adorned with ducks. I'm going to say it was my grandfather's idea because he did it first, said Doug Corwin. It was Corwin's great-grandfather who started raising ducks in 1908, when Long Island was famous for its duck farms. Now, Crescent Duck Farm is the only one left. It produced 1 million ducks a year until 2 weeks ago, when bird flu shut the farm down. Corwin said, I saw a flock one day that was great, and the next day was lethargic, wasn't eating. It looked like something I'd never seen before. Dozens of state and local agricultural workers dressed in biohazard suits assisted in the euthanasia of the entire flock, 100,000 ducks. Whether it's ducks or chickens, since the current strain of bird flu, H5N1, reached the United States in 2022, over 148 million birds have been ordered euthanized. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Farms and Frontlines. I am your host, Max Terzano, and I'm joined as always by Jessica Rudo.
Hey there.
And as you may have guessed, today we're doing this kind of impromptu episode on bird flu. And more than that, how it's affecting the price of eggs in the United States, because we're noticing it firsthand, right, Jess?
That's right. I went to the store and I just buy the store brand eggs. And yeah, they were like $8 for a dozen eggs. I was like, holy moly, this isn't what the heck's going on?
Yeah, no, that's crazy. I mean, like we've talked before, I buy the fancy schmancy, like cruelty-free, the chickens have velvet pillows, that kind of stuff.
Because you
And
can taste
it's
that freedom. You
you
taste it.
can. We're Americans, dang it. Uh, but the eggs themselves, like even those eggs, those are
Hmm.
like double the price normally. Those
Yeah.
are typically like 5.99, right?
Hmm.
For a dozen
Hmm.
large eggs.
Yeah.
So for regular store brand eggs to be $2 more, if you
Yeah.
don't know what's going on, it's like, okay, what the heck? What is this?
Yeah. And I was, I don't know. I was like, how much more is this now for eggs? Because I was like, I don't feel like I ever paid anywhere near $8 for eggs.
Right?
Surely.
You don't know how much
So
until it's
I
hit you in the
know it's
face. It's
only
like, wait
like,
a minute.
yeah. Yeah, but I did a little quick egg price history, if you don't mind me going into it.
No, please.
Um, I went all the way back to 1981. What
Wow.
would your guess be 40 years ago, how much eggs cost?
Man, not $8. I would say like what, like $1.50 for 12 eggs.
86 cents. So we're up 100% almost from
Yeah,
40
that's
years ago.
insane.
1991, 81 cents, so it stays pretty similar. Same in
Hmm.
2001, 94 cents.
Really?
2011, yeah. 2011 goes up to $1.68. And then I just jumped to January of 2023. It's $4.82. So it's a huge jump in January 2023. But then later that year it goes down to $2.21 in
Hmm.
June, and then ends the year, or I'm sorry, the next year, December 2024, $5.49. So from June, nope. So from December 2024 to January 28th, 2025, the average price is $7.18. So it's
That's
gone up
insane.
like two and change in just like a month. So Newsweek was saying it's gone up 22% in
Wow.
just the first month of
Oh my
2025.
gosh.
Yeah.
I'm gonna create one of those like mypetition.coms, be like,
Oh
bring eggs back to
yeah.
84 cents.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bring back the very early 80s
Yeah, yeah.
in egg prices only.
Just in prices, please.
Yeah. And then, I was asking like, okay, that's a lot for eggs, but how how many eggs do Americans eat? So average, every American is eating 284 eggs a year. So it's hundreds of millions of metric tons of eggs each year in the United States. So it's a huge market, a sizable market.
Hmm.
So, and then if everybody's eating 284 eggs, like, $2 price just for an everyday commodity. And that's just eggs, right? So we're talking about everything is going to go up. Chicken price, like the meat is going to go up.
Right, right, right.
So, it hurts everybody's, bottom line there.
Yeah, for
Like
real. Because
everybody's, yeah,
I
restaurants,
mean,
everybody, yeah.
yeah, I buy primarily like I don't really eat all that much red meat, but I buy
Hmm.
chicken and turkey quite frequently.
Hmm.
So like now that we're talking about it, I'm like, ah, crap. I'm gonna have to do something.
What could we do? Maybe we'll find out later this episode.
That would be, oh, foreshadowing. I love it.
So not only have we already gotten a 22% increase in 2025, that same Newsweek article was saying the USDA is predicting eggs will go up another 20% in the remaining months of 2025. So like a $9 for a dozen eggs. Can you even imagine that?
I can't. That would be like you're
Yeah.
just not gonna buy eggs, right? And
Yeah. I mean, what do
it's
you,
really
yeah.
tough for farmers because it's not like they're
Yeah.
doing this on purpose. They're not like,
No
I'm just
way.
gonna
Yeah.
raise eggs to $9 and live large. Like,
They're
woo.
not the cartels, or are
Yeah.
they? No. No.
Yeah, seriously, there's no like the grocery stores aren't like extorting farmers that we know of. If they are, we'll find out.
Yeah. We're up to
Yeah,
you.
we'll find out. We'll get you. Like there's nothing they could do. Like we just mentioned in
Yeah.
the article I read a little earlier from a CBS
Mhm.
News article that was just really fascinating to me. It was by Martha Teachner, and she wrote that February 2nd, 2025. And it's astonishing how
Mhm.
just overnight a duck farm that produced 1 million ducks a year just all of a sudden is no longer in business.
Yeah,
And
it's
like that,
crazy. So sad.
what is that farmer supposed to do? You know, like there's nothing he can do. Like this farm has been in his family since the 1640s, and just all of a sudden it's gone because of this new version of the
Mhm.
flu. The what was it called?
Uh,
HPAI,
hi
the
highly pathogenic,
or
highly
avian
pathogenic
influenza.
strain of avian flu. Yeah, avian
Right.
influenza. Right.
So just because this it's so easy for birds to catch this disease,
Hmm.
this flu, just overnight they got it, and all of a sudden his not only is his like family farm that they've had since the 1600s just done,
Hmm.
but he had to fire, I think it was close to 50 people because there's nothing
Yeah.
left to do on the farm. So their livelihoods are gone, the farm is gone. Like he's had,
Yep.
it's like he likened it to like saying goodbye to family members because that's just
Right.
what they did, right?
Right. The grief of like losing his entire flock overnight. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I can't even imagine like
Yeah, it's terrible.
poor man. But this is happening all around the country. It's not just and not just America. I
Hmm.
think it first got into the country because of like wild geese in
Hmm.
Canada first had it, and it traced
And
it all the way back to a province in like southern China. But
hmm.
we'll skip past that.
We don't need to add any more
Yeah,
strain
no
to
conspiracy
strain
series.
to
This is
China
yeah.
or Canadian relations with the United States.
Believe it or not, not every one of our episodes ends with China.
They have made it into this one. But anyway,
Yeah, yeah, they snuck in.
so just to break it down even more. So like we have already said, that this price increase in eggs due to avian flu, and what that is just a strain of like well, how we get the flu, like humans get the flu. It's a strain of influenza, the virus that affects mostly birds. However, it is affecting a lot of cows now. So
Right.
this cow-bird relations need to stop.
Yeah,
Um,
we need to. I want to make a
um,
Doge joke, but it's just too depressing.
Um, the cure right now, like Max has talked about, is you have to kill or other known as cull the flock or the herd. There is no like well, not antibiotics because it's a virus, but
Yeah, you
right,
can't
there's
give
no like
like hundreds of thousands of
medicines. Yeah.
ducks flu vaccine or something, unfortunately.
Yeah. Because and it's just like with humans, the virus is mutating and
Hmm.
changing and different strains. So there is no way everything would be predictive and there's no way to know that it would be worth it.
Right. And if you
Um,
listen to our Haiti episodes, like the
mhm,
same thing happened with the prized Haitian Creole pigs. They
mhm.
got a version of swine flu, and the American
So
USDA was like, we need to cull this entire herd to the point of extinction.
do you remember though? They didn't even get swine flu yet. It was
It's
the
a preemptive.
that's right. They're like
Hmm.
it's probably you're probably going to get it, so kill your herd now so you can
Yeah.
try to save something. Yeah, but it ends up like right, the Creole pig is now extinct. Anyway, so even in just 2025, so Max mentioned 145 million birds have been killed, but even in just January and February, as of like 3 days ago, so February 7th, 14 million hens have been killed in 2025. Isn't that nuts?
That is 14 million hens is an
in
insane
like
number. So what
six
is that like
weeks. Yeah.
or a tenth in 6 weeks? Like tenth of the
Yeah.
number of birds? That's
From the last 3 years. Yeah, it's
yeah, that's
crazy.
just insane.
So while avian flu is a majority of the reason why this price is so high right now for eggs, there are other things that are also contributing to this high price. So one of them is, you're contributing to this, Max. It's cage-free eggs.
Mm,
There's new laws in certain states that are making it mandatory, which, we could go into another episode, like what some of these like factory farms, but
yeah,
for right now, what we're talking about, there's new laws like in California and Michigan and Colorado where the minimum space requirements for eggs for egg laying hens has expanded. So they have to be cage free, they need a certain amount of land.
right,
So
okay.
what that means for these farmers, it has reduced the overall production capacity.
Right,
So while the hens are in better living conditions, they can only have so many hens per acre. You know what I mean?
right. Yeah, they can't just shove them like
Right.
hundreds of thousands into one little barn and be like,
Right.
lay eggs.
Yeah. Now you're cage free.
Yeah. You don't have a cage, but there's 4
Yeah.
million of you in here.
Yeah, right. You can't
Yeah.
move, but yeah. So, right.
Yeah. No, that
Um,
makes sense.
so that has, that's a new law has been put in place in some states. I think in total there's only 11 states that are doing that right now, still affecting the supply.
Mhm.
And then the other thing is transportation. So since COVID in the United States, it has been really hard for companies to have like steady truck drivers.
Right.
And especially refrigerated truck drivers. So since there just isn't a supply of truck drivers to move eggs, they have now moved to refrigerated shipping,
Oh,
as you can
wow.
imagine, which you can imagine is like way more expensive
Right. Yeah.
than the truck driving it.
Hmm.
So since this is the critical part of like egg transportation, it has also increased the end price for the consumer. And second and third order effects of like, okay, we can't find people to drive trucks. What does that mean?
Right.
It means that your eggs are going to cost $1 million.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's like everything we talk about. Like it's not just
Yeah.
one thing. Like you think, okay, yeah, there's bird flu and there's less birds, so there's fewer eggs, so the price is
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
up. So
Yeah.
yes, that's the main point, but also just the logistics are getting more and more difficult.
Yeah. Just compounding, like,
Hmm.
just these strains on our supply chains and our food supply chains specifically, and then how vulnerable it is from like multiple venues. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's really wild to think about because I live in New Hampshire and the egg prices have remained like pretty stable for a while, but we are starting to feel it now as bird flu has reached Massachusetts and it's kind of devastating flocks down there.
Yeah.
But I know we were talking about it earlier where like New England is very interconnected, right?
Hmm.
Like Maine and Vermont and New Hampshire and all of that. It's they're three different states, but they're extremely similar.
Uh-huh.
There's not a huge population in any of them. Vermont is the second least populated state in the country.
Oh.
So we share a lot, like
Hmm.
logistically, we share over supply lines and everything like that. So as soon as one state starts feeling it, it's going to kind of just cascade into the next and keep going like that. So
Sure. Yeah.
we're starting to feel it. And I imagine it's not long before it's everywhere and hopefully it gets better. But, one of the things that you and I were talking about is like, what can we do to like
Hmm.
support small farmers and stuff like that? But there's really not a great answer here
Yeah.
because the answer to curing bird flu is to just cut it off at the source, cull the herd,
Hmm.
and hope it doesn't keep spreading.
That's right.
So it's
And bird
not,
flu, it can affect backyard farmers. Like,
yeah,
it doesn't matter the size of the farm, big or small, it can affect anybody.
exactly. And this is like, I don't want to say it's like COVID for birds, but
Well, it's the flu, right? It's the
it's
flu
a
season.
very contagious flu that birds are
Hmm.
very susceptible to.
Yeah.
So it's going around, and it's like the article at the beginning of the at the top of the episode said, one day they were fine, the next day they were lethargic and not eating, and had to cull 100,000 birds, which is
Yeah.
just uh, mind-boggling, really.
You know what I find a little ironic? Um, in the 50s, there was a doctor who was born in 1919. So right after the big influenza of
Mhm.
1918. So very like, he grew up with knowing like this could be a big deal, right? The flu is very scary. Um, he he heard of an outbreak of the flu that was really affecting the population in China.
Hmm.
And he asked for, through the university that he worked for, he asked for a sample to work on. And he used, through his work and everything, he then used eggs to inject like what he thought would be a pliable vaccine
Hmm.
to see if he could get ahead of this strain getting into the United States.
Right, right, right.
And he was successful.
Hmm.
But it was having that egg as the incubator to like work on and use and then test the vaccine on
Hmm.
that made it like feasible, made it able to be a real thing.
Hmm.
And that's how the first, how we get the flu vaccine every year.
Yeah, that was the
That's how
first
it
one.
starts.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
But
I
they
didn't know
used
that.
it first on the military because in 1918 a lot of the deaths were from the military, because it was the outbreak that came in Spain
Right.
in World War One. So the military were the first ones to like really test this annual vaccine, and
Hmm.
then later the public was like, wait a minute, we all want to get tested. We all want to be safe from the flu, and then it became like a more publicized vaccine annually. But there's some irony there where it's like because of the egg, we have that vaccine now.
Right. And yet,
But yet now eggs are so affected by their own version of influenza.
right.
I don't know.
So what we need is a bird scientist.
To inject us.
Yeah, not a scientist of birds, a bird scientist. Don't
Yeah.
get the two confused.
If it was it would be crows. Crows are so smart.
It would be crows, yeah. And one like
You see one with like spectacles and like the lab coat.
why does that bird keep trying to get into the infirmary?
Weird.
Hmm.
Anyway, but something else we were thinking about, we have learned a lot about the food supply chain and how people are attacking like the insecurity of food supply chains. One of the things that came about was alternative proteins. Like,
That it did, yeah.
is this a space that could be filled by alternative proteins? We don't know how to, outside of killing an entire flock or an entire herd, yet the demand for eggs is not going down. How do we fill that gap so that everybody's not paying, $15 a dozen or
Right.
whatever, right?
Hmm. So speaking of alternative proteins, we actually have a guest coming on right now who you may remember. He was our first ever guest on Farms and Frontlines, and now our first ever reoccurring guest. So
Hooray.
we'd really like to welcome back David Voorman, Vice President at Food Solutions Action. David, thanks so much for joining us again. We really appreciate it and love having you here.
Thanks for having me back. I didn't realize I had the esteemed honor of being the first ever guest and
Yep.
reoccurring guest.
Yes, sir. Saved especially for you, buddy.
You know what you get? You get a sticker.
Another one. Maybe we'll make a different one. I don't know.
So, David, nice to meet you. As I was saying earlier, I wasn't on that first episode, but nice to have you in here. So, we have a couple of questions for you, if you don't mind. So, we're talking about, avian flu and how it's kind of affecting our food supply chain, even if it's minimally just by increasing the price. But having such a massive effect on the egg industry and with no real solution outside of culling the herds or the flocks, is this a space that alternative proteins could fill to help strengthen our food supply chain?
It absolutely is. Yeah, I think it was about 3 weeks ago. It was Friday night. I was scrolling on Twitter, as I often do on Friday nights, and I saw the news out of Georgia that they had halted all poultry
Mhm.
production in the state of Georgia. But it was just one of those other reminders that that's 15% of the
Mhm.
US poultry population. So whether we're talking chicken meat or we're talking eggs, that has a huge impact. And
Mhm.
I think it was just one more example of how critical alternative proteins are. There are companies out there that are doing egg substitutes. So there's a plant-based egg out there on the market called Just Egg that I know
Mhm.
is available in every major retailer. That's a plant-based egg made from mung beans. And, that's one that I know they've had really big inroads in the kids with allergies. So kids that
Oh
are
yeah.
have egg allergies, a lot of families have gone to Just Egg. But that's one more, just another product out there to alleviate the pressure. If understanding 100% of Americans aren't going to switch
Mhm.
to just egg.
Right,
But when
right.
you've got such market disruptions, if 10, 20, 30% of the population wants to switch and have another product, that has huge
Mhm.
impacts on the market and really what people are paying. I think one of the what we saw in November is that grocery prices are certainly front of mind for many Americans, and people
Yeah.
continue to talk about the price of eggs and the cost of a
Mhm.
dozen eggs. And one of the major factors has been avian flu. So
Mhm.
having that outlet of alternative proteins really alleviates pressure on the market. It's more options for consumers, and ultimately, it's hopefully lower prices for the American consumers when they're going to the grocery stores.
Yeah, because if nothing else, that's adding to the supply to help alleviate some of that demand.
Exactly. It's diversification. It's frustrating when we see avian flu really
Hmm.
wreaking havoc, and we should be doing everything we can to help the poultry farmers and getting ahead of this and helping our farmers.
Hmm.
But really the message around APs, as long as I've been doing this, is not this is a replacement, it's a supplement. Demand's
Hmm.
going up, and having more options and having things to supplement the supply is best for everybody.
No,
Yeah,
absolutely.
100%.
And I mean, like you just said, with the halting poultry production in Georgia, and Jess and I led off the top of the episode with a duck farm in Long Island that was been completely shut down. It was like
Hmm.
the last remaining duck farm in Long Island, where they produced about 1 million ducks a year. Yeah, they had to cull a flock of 100,000. So it's not just, like eggs or
No,
chickens and
right.
eggs. It's chickens, eggs, turkeys. It's poultry. It's just
Hmm.
the range. It's wide ranging. We even talked about how it's starting to affect other livestock
Cows.
like cows.
Hmm.
And I mean, there have been even people who get it, which it's not like, a COVID level threat or anything like that, but it's still able to be transmitted, and it's dangerous, and it continues to keep growing. So it's just strange time where you don't have an answer,
Hmm.
except possibly there are things out there like alternative proteins that can help alleviate the stress a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great point, Max. Where it's the great thing is we see bird flu and these other zoonotic diseases is that, the cultivated meat is clean meat. Cultivated meat doesn't have bird flu. Bird flu can infect bioreactors or a
Hmm.
lot of these alternative protein processes. So it
Right.
really is just one more diversified that we know can be kept, safe and clean and healthy, and there's an option there that's not going to be impacted as bird flu rages.
No, that's
Yeah.
that's a really good point. Like, because whether you're getting your eggs from the grocery store or your neighbor, but you do know for a fact that cultivated eggs or meats or anything, like you said, in the bioreactor is going to be clean. It's going to be healthy. It doesn't have these strains of flu.
And they monitor that, and if there's an issue with the batch, they get rid of the batch. I was at a company that was doing cultivated chicken, and I asked, "Can you eat it right out of the bioreactor raw?" And the answer was, "There's no reason not to. You don't have the E. coli concerns. You don't have any of the disease concerns. I don't know why you would want to eat raw chicken. It wouldn't taste great, but you could, which really kind of demonstrates the safety of this product."
Yeah,
I
that's
think
awesome.
that's just a good thing to think about as we're thinking about bird flu and the prices when you go to the grocery store. And like just, we led this episode saying like you went to the grocery store and saw egg prices were $8 for your
Yeah.
store brand eggs. Like, to think about the alternatives. They are out there, and if you don't want to do that, that's perfectly fine. You
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
have to, but there are things you can do to kind of help alleviate your grocery bill.
I think just, thinking of alternative proteins just in a different matter where overall, whether I eat them or not, it will help my bottom line.
Hmm.
Just also is just helpful, I think, in terms of how do we help our food supply chains? Like, how do we
Yeah.
help insulate it more? Versus like, I'm telling you, you can't eat eggs or you can't eat chickens. You have to
Yeah,
go to
yeah.
this different thing. It's just like expanding how we're thinking about this topic and alternative proteins.
Yeah, I think it's important to bring it up.
Just as we talk about,
Hmm.
the kind of a diverse energy supply and
Yeah.
protecting U.S. domestic sources of energy, it's that food is
Yep.
energy. It's food
Hmm.
and fuel, and it's frustrating. You hear lawmakers, you tune into any ag committee hearing, Senate or
Hmm.
House, and you hear now food security is national security. You hear that
Hmm.
repeated. And then you have some of these same lawmakers that turn around and are trying to gut U.S. investment and banning government money
Yeah.
for research and development into specifically cultivated meat, and it doesn't make sense in that
Hmm.
if you really, it's exactly what you said, Jess. If you really want to protect American consumers and lower the bottom line, the more diversity that's out there, that's really what strengthens the supply chain, is not banning products and not banning innovation,
Right.
but making sure we can really diversify and that it's American innovation. Because, I had said this on the first podcast, but it's not just the United States that's investing in this, it's
Mhm.
a global thing. And, if China's the one that figures this out and the US says we don't want alternative proteins, and the worst happens, then all of a sudden now we're relying on China because people need
Mhm.
protein. So we really do need
Yeah.
a diverse protein supply, and we really want it to be really American-made protein supply.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so just one question to kind of go off of that. We talked a little bit about how supply chains are disrupted because just it's difficult to find truck drivers after COVID. Like it's something that has just kept
Mm.
continued on and has been an issue to the point where like egg manufacturers are having to like ship eggs like in
Mhm.
frozen containers because they can't find drivers
Refrigerated.
for
Yeah.
refrigerated trucks. Is there any sort of issue with logistically getting it around the country, or is that something that they're doing just fine with?
I think as far as products go, with general plant-based and other APs, I assume they're having the same issues, but I'm not
Uh-huh.
sure. I mean, one of the exciting things about cultivated is not having, you're really able to put kind of a cultivated manufacturing facility and a lot of these bioreactors. NASA, we talked about cows in space, and NASA
Right.
wanted to do a bioreactor in the space station or in a space shuttle. So there is a world where you could have a neighborhood bioreactor and walk 2 blocks
Yep.
to get your protein that's made in the bioreactor down the street. So I think that does also could help alleviate some supply chain issues.
I think
Max,
yeah,
do you remember we were talking about that where I was saying if they made it like a microbrewery?
exactly.
Yeah.
And like
That's
David and I touched on that in the first time David was on, where I
Mhm.
think there was one company that was doing it from like an old brewery in Brooklyn.
Yeah, make it like
So
microbrewery type, yeah.
it's like you don't need to have a massive farm where,
Hmm.
or like we were talking about with chickens in California, where you need so many acres for so many
Hmm.
chickens. And it's like, no, if you have enough reactors, you're good to go. So I think that's something pretty cool and something to keep an eye out. But do you have any final thoughts or anything, David, or anything you want to say specifically?
I think sometimes we're a little bit hesitant to talk about issues like bird flu and zoonotic diseases because it looks like the AP space is coming after kind of traditional animal agriculture and it's more of an us versus them. And I think we really need to get ahead of this. We need to support our farmers, but it really
Hmm.
isn't all of the above solution. It's about diversifying, it's about supplementing. None of this is about replacement. And I
Yeah.
think when it comes to bird flu, I think we need to be more just demonstrating, and I think to the American consumers too, just saying, you may not want this, but even if you don't want to eat this, it's an important that we have our supply.
Hmm.
It's
Right.
important to diversify. And it really is not an us versus them thing. It's an all
Hmm.
of us together. And it's an all of us Americans, if I can wave the flag for a minute, because it really is important that we support our farmers, we support innovation, we support biotech, and we make sure that, Americans have a diverse and safe protein supply.
Agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Yeah.
just before I let you go, David, who do you got for the Super Bowl?
I mean, heart or head, right? I guess my heart, I don't want any of them to win,
Same, same. We're with you.
That's what we said last time. We're like, I hope nobody wins.
My head says though, I don't know, it's probably the Chiefs.
Yep.
Mm.
You
Speaking
know,
of, and this kind of fits in with this episode in a very weird way, but David, you'll enjoy this. Jess, you might as well. Patrick Mahomes at a Super Bowl press conference in New Orleans said that he might have to come over and hit a few balls for the Long Island Ducks minor league baseball team.
What?
Yeah, so, but David, I know when we were in Congress, we talked about the minor league baseball caucus a lot and how ridiculous minor league baseball team names are. So, we got a lot of enjoyment talking about the the trash pandas and the all those ridiculous teams out there.
Like
the
the
Rumble
Savannah
Ponies.
Bananas?
The Rumble Ponies, the Savannah Bananas, making bacon, Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp.
I mean, his dad was, I know, a baseball pitcher in the
Yeah.
Major League.
Oh,
Yep.
Okay.
okay.
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes, his dad actually played for the Ducks and the Mets back in the day. He pitched for the Ducks in 2006. So
It
Oh,
would be
okay.
very on brand to have Patrick Mahomes come and throw a couple innings, I think. But
my good buddy's dad was one of the founders of the Long Island Ducks. So shout out to them. Go Ducks. But David, Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it, especially on such short notice.
Yeah.
We're
Thank
always
you
love
again.
hearing from you.
Thanks for having me, and I'm excited to be your first time, third time guest. So,
Yeah.
No, thank you everybody again for joining us. We really we hope you enjoyed this episode. It's a little bit impromptu, but it covers a pretty important topic that's very relevant right now. So hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. As always, you can follow us on our socials, but for the most up-to-date and relevant information, just sign up for our newsletter. You can find it at farmsandfrontlines.substack.com, and we'll provide a link in this episode's description if you are interested. So thanks again, and we hope you keep tuning in.
Thank you everybody for joining in. We hope to hear, nope. We hope you join us next time.